you probably have never heard of this guy, but, stick with it. It's 23 and a Half Lies by James Patterson. This is actually a little bit different from his usual novels. It is a short story collection. It's 3 heart-racing thrillers. It is about Lindsay Boxer and her estranged father, and her trying to figure out what happened to him is the first story. And that is the title story of it. Hello. Fallen Ranger is the second story in this collection. It is about loyalty, and our protagonist is Rory Yates, who has discovered evidence that an ex-Texas Ranger has gone rogue. And this hurts him very much, so he's going to see if he can discover the truth of that. And then the final story in this collection is called Watch Your Back, and it is about a starving artist who is paid to expose a cheating spouse, and shenanigans ensue. Next, we have Holly by Stephen King. It is the story of Holly Ebony, a character from the Bill Hodges trilogy. She's described as a compelling and resourceful character who finally gets the spotlight all to herself as she pairs up against an unimaginably deprived and disguised adversary. Next we have Payback in Death by J.D. Robb. This is the 57th in the Eva Dallas series. In this new novel, Lieutenant Dallas has just returned from a long overdue vacation when she responds to a call of a suicide, but when the body is examined, something does not seem right. Blessing of the Lost Girls by J.A. Jance is a crossover novel with 2 of Jance's series. One of them is the Joanna Brady series, the other is the Walker family series. It's described as a tense, suspenseful mystery where Joanna and Jennifer Brady must work with Dan Parody, who is, sorry, I can't read my own notes, who is Brandon Walker's brother-in-law, sister-in-law, to solve the mystery of the murder of this young woman who is turned up near their home. Then there's the Armor of Light, turning the corner to a slightly lighter, pardon the puns. Story is The Armor of Light by Ken Follett. It is a sequel to The Calm of Fire, book set in Kingsbridge, England. We find ourselves in a clash between progressive and traditional factions with the invention of the spinning jenny, which is the multi-spindled spinning wheel. It's set in the 1770s and Follett's well-developed characters and beautiful details are on display in this new installment. The next one we have is The River We Remember by William Kent Kruger. This is a standalone novel. It is set in Jewell, Minnesota. On Memorial Day, the townspeople in Jewell, Minnesota gather to honor their own veterans when the half-clothed body of a wealthy landowner, Jimmy Quinn, is found floating in a river with a shot metal wound. It's described as complex and spellbinding. Happiness by Danielle Steele is coming out early in the month. This is a story about inner strength and finding 3 guesses. Happiness. Finding happiness. Sabrina Brooks has found peace and stability in her life as a thriller author when she receives a mysterious, not a scam letter that she has inherited a title and estate just outside of London, England. She is trying to decide whether she will upend her life and go ahead and take on this responsibility, or if she will stay where she is comfortable. And then finally, The Vaster Wild by Lauren Groff is coming out in the middle of the month. It is set around a servant girl who escapes from a colonial settlement into the wilderness. She is alone, she only has a few possessions and her wits, and she must figure out how to survive. It's described as a thrilling adventure with a thought-provoking meditation on a world succumbing to colonialism. So it should be good then. So that takes place early 1700s.
Okay.
Okay, in the world of nonfiction, Bill O'Reilly has a new one out in his popular Killing history series. This one's going to cover the Salem witch trials in 1692 and 1693 Massachusetts, of course, when the mysterious affliction of two girls resulted in the suspicion of witchcraft in the community, and the execution of 20 people found guilty of said crime. Walter Isaacson, who's written biographies on many famous folk, including Steve Jobs, Da Vinci, Einstein, is coming out with one about Elon Musk, the controversial and fascinating innovator, the man behind SpaceX and Tesla, current man presiding over Twitter. Isaacson shadowed Musk for 2 years and spent hours interviewing him and the people who know him best. Then you have Astor by Anderson Cooper and Catherine Howe. They tell the story of the Astor family, a family whose empire of wealth stretches back to the 18th century and extended through the New York's Gilded Age and up to today. Following that, we have The Six by Loring Brush. This would be of interest to fans of books like Hidden Figures and Code Girls. The Six is the untold story of America's first women astronauts. So 6 elite women selected from a pool of 8,000 candidates in 1978. The most famous of whom would be Sally Ride. To Infinity and Beyond by Buzz Lightyear, just kidding. Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson. So in this book, the well-known astrophysicist explains the universe from the solar system to the farthest reaches of space with authority and humor. An informative and engaging discussion of planetary science. Actress Kerry Washington has a memoir coming out called Thicker Than Water. This one's about her journey of self-discovery following an event that threw into question, quote, everything she thought she knew about herself. I don't know anything about what that was. I don't know if that's public knowledge, but that's all I could find out about it, so.
You have to read the book.
You'd have to read the book. Time and Turtles by Cy Montgomery. So Cy Montgomery is known for other nature writing, maybe most famously The Soul of an Octopus. She has a new book that centers on turtles, and it was inspired by the time she spent at the Turtle Rescue League, an organization that helps injured and sick turtles. And she uses the subject of turtles to explore the question, how can we make peace with our time? And this book also includes photorealistic illustrations by a wildlife artist named Mac Patterson. And then lastly, Build the Life You Want by Oprah Winfrey and Arthur C. Brooks. In this book, the authors seek to equip readers with the tools of emotional self-management to move them toward greater happiness. Maybe true love, I don't know. Sharing lessons from their own lives and careers.
Hi everyone. So first up for fiction is the newest in the Thursday Night Murder Club series. This will be the fourth, The Last Devil to Die. We have copies of the 3 previous ones on the shelf if anyone needs to catch up. The previous is The Bullet That Missed, so this will be third. Fourth one's the new one coming out. The gang's new foe, Viking, is a former KGB chief who has threatened Joyce, and they have to act first to save Joyce. So in this one, an old friend of the club's has been killed, and the package he was protecting has gone missing. The club search leads them to an antiques business, which is surprisingly sprinkled with drug dealers, art forgers, and online fraudsters. Beloved and returning characters Elizabeth, Joyce, Rob, and Abraham have no idea who to trust. Time is dwindling, and the body count is rising in this witty, new, exciting mystery. A read-alike for this would be last year's The Maid. For a unique, quirky main character, she has rules to follow. She's working as a maid. One day, she goes into a room and finds a dead body. So since she was last seen with a body, she's number 1 on the suspect list and needs to figure out who done it to protect herself with a clue-like feel. Next up is Rules Do Not Apply, which is a short story collection from bestseller Kate Atkinson. Atkinson usually writes for Jackson Brody series. She's not really known for short stories, so this will be something different for her. Reviews say be sure you check out her previous. This is a standalone historic fiction, I believe the 1920s. Mom working in a speakeasy, has to protect her family and watch over them, and she's surrounded by gangsters and moonshiners and all that kind of fun stuff in Shrines of Gaiety. In her newest one, it'll be 11 interconnected stories, ranging from a queen who makes a bargain she cannot keep, a secretary who watches the life she left from afar, a sports bettor who may or may not be talking with the horses right now. It's described as wonderfully original with sharp social observation that she's known for. Atkinson creates a multiverse where nothing is as it seems, described as a funny feast for the imagination. So something a little lighter for her would be nice. It made me think of Atwood's collection of short stories that came out last year. This is 15 short stories from reality to the surreal, all sorts of family stories included in this one as well. Next up, Anne Enright is an Irish writer. She's won a lot of European prizes for her writing. I have a lot of authors today who have written previously, not a lot of debuts, so a lot of them are the previous things published, such as Actress. And in this one, it's a family story with emotional insight. Daughter Nora yearns to learn who her father is from her mother, who's a former star of stage and screen in Europe. So that's Anne Enright's previous novel, Actress. In this newest one, The Wren, it's the story of Carmel and her daughter, a contemporary novel of mothers and daughters from prize-winning Irish author. We first get to know Mom Carmel when she's having her daughter. She's very alone in life. We get a peek into her relationship and her relationship with her parents. Later again, we'll meet up with her daughter, Nell, as Nell's a grown young woman. This is a generational story where we want to learn more about Nell's father and why things didn't work out. This literary piece promises to be a meditation on love, especially the love between mother and daughter, growing into your own person. It made me think of Lauren Groff's, who has a new one coming out, Vesper Winds. This is her bestseller. This is Fates and Furies. Nope. No, I'm just in the, all messed up. Okay, that's the next one. Lauren Groff does have a new one coming out, but I got ahead of myself. Claire Keegan, simple, beautiful style with small things like these. In this one, Tori has 5 daughters, and there's a lot of family struggles. As the daughters are growing up, there's a look at Ireland's Magdalena Laundries, which was for incarcerated women at the time. So also a crisp family story with family secrets. No, I did not write pregnant incarcerated women. They had it easy, huh?
His looks are amazing.
Claire Keegan? Okay, that's what threw me. I was like, now where are you pulling from? And you know, sometimes.
So this is The Amazing Grace Adams by Fran Littlewood. Yeah, I had to be careful about which cover I chose for the slides. This is described as a funny, touching, unforgettable story of an invisible every woman who's pushed to the brink and decides to push back. It's set in London, and we follow Grace, who is 45, as she sets across the city on foot with her 16-year-old daughter's birthday cake after getting stuck in traffic, because she has just had enough. Along the way, she hopes to remind not only her daughter, but herself and everyone else that she is amazing, and that you can always pick yourself up after you fall. The first green light that came to mind is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman, just because you have a similar female protagonist who is kind of rediscovering herself and that she does have something to offer the world as she explores her building and her coworker and discovers unlikely friendships with said unhygienic coworker and elderly neighbor. The other one we have is Where'd You Go, Bernadette? This is also the story of a quirky woman who, after a string of comical events, decides to escape suburbia in order to find herself. It's described as a sharp, witty, character-driven story.
Okay. So John Connolly wrote a book called The Book of Lost Things in 2006. This is, I don't know if it's technically a sequel, but it takes place in the same world he created in that book. So people who were a fan of that, say they've been long and waiting for this book to come out. It's an atmospheric, dark fairy tale about a single mother's devotion to her hospitalized daughter. So the mother's name is Ceres, and her 8-year-old daughter is in a coma after a car accident that nearly killed her. And Ceres passes the time by her daughter's hospital bed reading to her fairy tales from her childhood. When she finds herself strangely drawn to an old house near the hospital, Ceres finds herself entering another world populated by fairies and strange beasts, struggling to get her daughter back. So it's an imaginative story about the redemptive power of stories and family. You could also check out Fairy Tale by Stephen King. In this one, a troubled teenager discovers a portal to another world. Also includes a lot of allusions to well-known fairy tales. Another book in a similar vein is The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. In this one, a teenage girl must venture into a dark fantasy world to rescue her mother. Okay, this is The Enemy Beside Me by Naomi Reagan. This novel is inspired by true events. Milia Gottstein is the head of what's called the Survivors Campaign, which is an organization that she kind of inherited the reins of from her father and grandfather. And the purpose of the organization is to bring Nazi war criminals to justice. She's about to retire from the work that is very meaningful, but also has been very overwhelming. And as she's doing so, she receives an unexpected phone call that results in a great deal of personal turmoil. And at the same time, an invitation to speak at a Holocaust conference from a man she suspects has ulterior motives. Naomi Reagan lives in Jerusalem and writes at least what some people call Jewish fiction. This one has reconciliation as a theme. There's also a thread of romance in the novel. A couple similar reads would be Counting Lost Stars by Kim Van Alkenade, I'm not sure. In this one, a young woman falls for a young Jewish man who is traumatized by being separated from his mother during the Holocaust. And then The Boston Girl by Anita Diamant. You have another Jewish female protagonist, a lot of commentary on Jewish culture. This is a novel about family ties and values, friendship and feminism told through the eyes of a young Jewish woman growing up in Boston in the early 20th century.
Nathan Hill's second novel, Wellness, comes out in September. He previously got rave reviews for The Knicks. We have that in shelves too. Struggle of a son in his search to uncover the secrets of his life without his mother, a couple years ago. So this one, it's a witty novel about marriage, health, happiness, and stories that bind us. It's set in 90s Chicago, from suburbia to the art scene. Wellness is a love story with insight and irony. A couple's relationship is explored through 20 years of life, growing up together, growing apart, trying to navigate everything from inner demons, career struggles, childhood memories. Will they grow back together? And Nathan Hill's critics say it promises humor and heart. Made me think of the Echo Chamber. Reviews say that there's a lot of satirical references to things that are very much popular now, or were popular in the 90s, like the art scene and the diet detox culture and the home renovation culture. The Echo Chamber also has really interesting characters, and you get insight into someone's marriage as well. Lauren Graff's Fate and Furious, she has a new one, The Vesper Winds, coming out in September. This one was her previous bestseller. It's the story of one marriage of over 20 plus years told from both perspectives.
Hemlock Island. It's a story about smiles and sunshine.
Tell by the cover.
No, actually, it's a domestic horror tale about a divorcee who goes to investigate disturbing activities at her island vacation house. So, despite her misgivings, Lainey Kilpatrick, never been a fan of that last name, has been renting out her vacation home after her divorce. After her divorce has left her with little to nothing. Troublingly, the renters begin reporting strange and scary things, mysterious fires, hex circles, bloody nail marks. When she goes to investigate the claims, she finds herself trapped on the island along with her ex-husband and 4 other unexpected visitors from her past. It's a thrilling, tightly focused horror tale with well-developed characters. An author who writes similar things to Kelly Armstrong would be Jennifer McMahon. This is her book, The Drowning Kind. This is a novel of psychological horror about a therapist who returns to the old family home after her sister drowns in a swimming pool and discovers something sinister lurking beneath its surface. And then The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. It's an atmospheric and suspenseful novel about a group of college friends snowed in at a hunting lodge. Yes, there is murder. Mother-Daughter Murder Night by Nina Simon. This is a mystery. This one's a debut. It's a feisty, female-driven whodunit about a grandmother-mother-daughter trio of amateur sleuths who team up to solve a murder in a coastal California town. So while undergoing cancer treatments, high-powered businesswoman Lana Rubicon finds herself in the uncomfortable position of having to release the reins of her real estate empire and go convalesce in her daughter's house outside of the city. But when her granddaughter comes across a dead body while kayaking, making her a murder suspect, Lana seizes on the opportunity to feel useful again, and the three women work together to try and find the real murderer. Simon stops her layered plot with plausibly motivated suspects and convincing red herrings, but it's her indomitable female characters and their nuanced relationships that gives this mystery its spark. It's from Publishers Weekly. So, again, recommending The Maid. I won't repeat the synopsis because Nicole did such a superb job. And then another one you might check out would be Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. In this one, you have a lonely old lady who lives above her Chinatown tea shop in San Francisco, and she turns amateur detective after a dead body turns up in said tea shop.
I mean, we'll figure it out. Just to keep it going. We really want you to read this book. Just a lot. Alright, so the Museum of Failures is described as family divorce fiction. It is a riveting story of secrets, family, and forgiveness. We follow Remy Waddle, who is returning to Bombay to adopt a child of a teenage friend, of a friend's teenager who does not want to keep the child. He hasn't been back there to see his aged mother since he moved to Columbus, Ohio, with his American wife many, many years ago. And as he returns, he discovers a lot of family secrets and things that he did not realize about his parents. It's described as a beautifully written story with deep themes and realistically flawed characters. First read-alike I have is Unaccustomed Earth. This is actually a short story collection. It's deeply emotional and thought-provoking stories that focus on the immigrant experience, specifically of Indian and Bangladeshi individuals from all walks of life. The other thing that that description made me think of was Hula, which is on the new shelf. It has a similar theme of families and secrets and forgiveness, and it looks at the relationship between three sets of women and their connection to Hawaii and Hula specifically, and what it means to belong to a community. It's a blend of history and family saga, so it's a lot of fun. And then, let's see, I'm trying to think of how to work this one in here. The main character discovers that she has a family she didn't know she had, as she just tries to clear her name at the hotel with which she works. There we go. The next one is The Fraud by Zadie Smith. This is described as a kaleidoscope work of historical fiction set against a legal trial that divided Victorian England. And it's all about who deserves to tell their story and to be believed. It centers on the Tichborne trial in 1873. Our protagonist is Eliza Tuchet and Andrew Bogle, who find themselves embroiled in this scandal to determine if the long-lost heir to the Tichborne estate and title is who he says he is. It's described as a dazzling novel about truth, fiction, hypocrisy, and the complex nature of people. The first read like I have is The Luminaries by Eleanor Canton. It has a similar examination of truth and fiction, and the lines between authenticity and fraud are very thin in this novel. It's set also in the late 1800s. Our protagonist is Walter Moody, who arrives on the West Coast to make his fortune, but finds himself quickly pulled into a circle of intrigue where he must tread very carefully because nothing is as it seems. The other thing that the fraud made me think of was Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens, because it also explores who deserves to be listened to, who deserves to have their story believed. Our protagonist in this one is Kaya. She has always been an outsider because she grew up in the marsh and she's had to fend for herself. And it becomes very apparent how outside she is when she is accused of murdering the handsome, well-liked All-American football star named Chase Andrews. And shenanigans ensue.
So this one is a debut novel, although not a debut author. Amy Chua is known for her parenting memoir called Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother, which came out in 2011. But this one is a novel. It's a historical mystery set in Berkeley, California, 1944, so wartime. Japanese citizens are being forced into internment camps, communist activists are at work, and a presidential hopeful is murdered in an iconic hotel. Evidence points to the granddaughters of a wealthy socialite whose sister also happens to have been murdered in the same hotel 10 years earlier. The protagonist here is police detective Al Sullivan, a man of blended heritage, familiar with racial prejudice, which is a theme in the book, and also included are cameos of real life figures, people like Chiang Kai-shek, for example. The Library Journal says the historical mystery debut by Yale Law School professor Chua is a successful, compelling mashup of California history, ghost story, family tale, and social commentary. So a couple read-alikes would be The Hollywood Spy by Susan Elia McNeil. This is, I believe, the latest in her Maggie Hope historical mystery series. This one's set in 1943 Los Angeles, so similar setting there. You have the American-born secret agent and British spy, that's Maggie Hope, investigates the death of a young woman found in the pool of one of California's trendiest hotels. And then for more on the Asian culture historical theme, Daughter of Molokai follows the story of a quarantined leprosy patient, Rachel Kalama's daughter, Ruth, who was raised by adoptive Japanese parents on a California grape farm before her unjust internment during World War II. Devil Makes 3 by Ben Fountain. This is the author's second novel. His first, Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, which came out in 2012, won the National Book Critics Circle Award. This one's a propulsive historical political thriller. Set in Haiti in 1991, you have the American expat Matt Amaker, who has to abandon his beachfront scuba business following the upheaval that results from the violent deposition of the Haitian president. He embarks on a lucrative or potentially lucrative treasure hunting scheme with his business partner that gets him in more trouble than he bargains for. The author has a good deal of background knowledge. According to Kirkus, his grasp of the country's folklore and history is worked satisfyingly deep into the book's pages. So you have themes here of greed, power, American complicity, corruption, and violence. A couple similar books in terms of political thrillers, and these are both probably old enough to be considered classics. To Have and Have Not by Ernest Hemingway. Publishers Weekly actually directly says that Devil Makes 3 is similar to this one. They say it reads like an update of Hemingway's To Have and Have Not, which is a tale of smuggling, intrigue, and love set in Cuba. And then A Flag for Sunrise by Robert Stone, which is one of 3 novels in this particular book here. This one depicts a leftist revolution in Central America and its impact on 3 North Americans.
In the long game, soccer coach Adeline Reyes is sent to the middle of nowhere in North Carolina, a very small town, after an embarrassing viral video incident that involved a team mascot. There, she's set to coach the Green Warriors to redeem herself, but they're not helping matters much. They're wearing tutus, there's goats on the field, they're scared of Adeline, and oh yeah, they're 9-year-olds. To complicate things, Cameron Caldani is a local, like a temporary local resident. He's a goal-keeping prodigy in the soccer world. His presence is very unexpected. So, Adela realizes Cameron would be a perfect assistant coach to this team, and when she tries to run into him, the incident involves a rooster, a car bumper, and a really bad first impression. She's determined to help this children's team and help herself and work her way out of this embarrassment. And romance and comedy will ensue. It made me think of Lucy Score. She's really popular for her Knock 'Em Out series, but in this one, Maggie moves on. Maggie is a upstart home renovator that likes moving around and likes being her own boss. And one day she gets help from a local guy who stirs things up for her, makes her question her life a little bit. It also made me think of Allie Hazelwood's Love Hypothesis series. This one's really cute and flirty. It focuses on strong, smart female characters and romantic comedies. For example, in this one, I do believe it's an adjunct professor, the female character, and since she's just adjunct, she's not quite making ends meet, so she's a girlfriend for hire, and she meets, a dreamy beau or two along the way. Okay, so Ron Rash, his previous novel, The Risen, came out in 2016, so he doesn't write in a quick fashion like a lot of popular fiction writers do, but when I was acquainting myself with him, reviews said he's always worth the wait. In The Risen, it takes place in the 1960s, brothers dealing with a shocking family secret. This one also made me think of Where the Crawdads Sing, for a small town environment where the main character is underestimated and undervalued. But in his newest, The Caretaker, we're going to start in 1950s in small town North Carolina. This location is not very welcoming to newcomers or any folks who are different. Jacob Hampton's rich parents disinherit him when he marries Naomi. Naomi's a very big disappointment. She's poor, she's uneducated, she's very young. Jacob's been called off to duty and sent to Korea. So Naomi is going to be alone at home, pregnant, and his family's not being supportive at all. So he asks his lifelong friend, Blackburn Grant, to look after Naomi. Now, Blackburn is the local cemetery attendant, and a childhood disease has left him scarred, and he's very unsightly to look at, one of the outcasts in the community. These two loners grow closer, and a terrible secret looms in their future. Described as tender and luminous, The Caretaker is a riveting story about friendship and family with flawed characters in a beautiful way. And Cleves has a new one. The Raging Storm is third in a series. I brought with me the first, The Long Haul. In this, we're going to get to know Detective Matthew Venn, and we see him at a funeral, and we're going to find the story of the murder that brings him back to his hometown in Greystone, Devon, so in England. In the newest one, Detective Matthew Venn is back. A local adventurous sailor, a local legend, Jem Roscoe, comes into Greystone, Devon. The residents are delighted and entertained to have a local celebrity in their midst, but they don't think of it when he disappears again swiftly. His body is found in a dinghy anchored off Scully Cove, a place with secrets all its own, and Detective Matthew Venn is on the case. He's back to his hometown of Greystone, and he's grown up with the locals, so he's having a really hard time investigating people he knew from his childhood. Another storm rolls in, and Venn and his team realize they might be in danger as well. It made me think of Alice Feeney's Daisy Darker for a dark atmosphere, interesting characters, great twists, and Daisy Darker revolves around a family reunion and a murder on an island. So a little bit of that Lockwood mystery.
Alright, so Not Forever, but For Now is described as horror satire. It is a hilarious satire about a family of professional killers responsible for the most atrocious events in history, and the younger brothers, the heirs of this family business that are destined to take over. Our protagonists are Otto and and Cecil, two brothers growing up in privilege in a Welsh country home as they are trying to decide what paths their lives will take. They like nature documentaries and enjoy just simple things, but their family is pressuring them to take on the family business. And it will either end in, and this is according to the various reviews, in a nuclear apocalypse or another day in the garden. Don't know, both potential. It's described as just irreverent with a unique cast of characters. There are a few trigger warnings just in general with this book, but it's described as very quirky and goofy. The person that it made me think of for this one, and both of my read-alikes are by them, is Grady Hendrix, who is super fun, who does also horror satire, although he's a little more lighthearted. The first one is My Best Friend's Exorcism. It has a similarly dark, humorous tone and focuses on the relationship between two protagonists, in this case, Abby and Gretchen, who are two high school sophomores. They have been friends forever, at least since the 4th grade, and is their friendship strong enough to beat the devil? We'll find out. The other one, which came out, I believe earlier this year, is How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady, also by Grady Hendrix, with a similar focus on family. Louise discovers that her parents have passed away and it's now up to her to clean out their house, except for the house has other ideas. It's also described as hilarious and sharp-witted. So this one I can only actually think of one read-alike for. This is Shot in the Dark by Victoria Lee. It is a contemporary romance. It's described as an emotionally powerful story about two people finding connections after struggling with addiction. Our protagonists are Eli and Wyatt, and while their relationship does start more on a physical level, it develops into something much deeper as they discover their shared experiences. It's described by many reviewers as compelling, thought-provoking, with complex themes and genuine characters. The thing that it made me think of was the Silver Linings Playbook by Matt Quick, which has a similarly powerfully emotional story with complex characters who see the world through the eyes of Pat, who is struggling with mental health issues and hoping to win back his wife, Nikki. And however, another woman, Tiffany, who also struggles with mental health, has ideas of her own and hopes to become a kindred spirit with Pat. It is also described as thought-provoking and compelling. Okay. The Stranger Upstairs is a psychological thriller. Who doesn't love a good house renovation show? I mean, I do. This is about a woman who is a successful lifestyle influencer who feels that renovating an infamous murder house is the perfect opportunity to distract from the fact that her marriage is failing and a bunch of other things are going wrong in her life. So it's all about fresh starts, but she discovers very quickly that fresh paint can't cover everything. It's described as gothic with a menacing tone, and it's just a generally well-crafted thriller that you watch everything as it just quietly spirals out of control. The first thing that popped into my head, and I was very sad to realize that we don't have a physical copy of this book anymore, was Stephen King's The Shining. For a very similar thing. So we do have it via Libby as an ebook and as an audiobook, but in The Shining, for those who are not familiar, it is our main character Jack Torrance and his family have moved to a beautiful and remote hotel for a fresh start as Jack gets a job there. But nothing is as it seems, and things start to spiral out of control for seemingly unknown reasons beyond red rum. The other read-alike I have is The Girl Before by J.P. Dunley. It has similar tones and a premise of getting somebody who's looking for a fresh start but gets a lot more than they bargained for. Jane, who has had a personal tragedy, looks to find a new apartment, and she discovers this one at 1 Fogelgate Street that just seems perfect. but then she moves in and learns about the untimely passing of the previous tenant, a woman who has too many similarities to her, and things start happening.
The Enchanters by James Ellroy. James Ellroy is famous for having written his L.A. Quartet, which is a series of 4 books that take place in historic Los Angeles. L.A. Confidential was one of them, The Black Dahlia was one of them. This one is similarly set in Hollywood. It's a stunning crime epic and psychological drama. 1962, you have Fred Otash, who's a shady ex-cop who has to trudge through the gritty city of Los Angeles as he investigates the death of Marilyn Monroe and the possibly connected kidnapping of another young starlet. The book is a blend of history and mystery and is described as a thrill ride. Ellroy displays a, quote, encyclopedic knowledge of mid-century Hollywood and creates a tour de force of vibe and atmosphere. So a couple similar reads, if you like noirish mysteries with homages to classic Hollywood, you can check out Indigo by Lauren Esselman. In this one, this is part of a series. You have a UCLA film archivist who investigates the disappearance of a movie star with mob connections. And Devil in a Blue Dress by Walter Mosley. This is the first in his most famous mystery series, and this is another kind of gritty mystery set in 1940s Los Angeles.
The Pole is the newest. It's actually a novella from J.M. Coetzee, who was from South Africa. He was the first person to win 2 Booker Prizes, and he is a Nobel Prize recipient as well. In this short story, a pianist falls head over heels in love. Polish pianist Witold Walczynski became infatuated with Beatrice after meeting her as she's organizing a concert for him in Barcelona. At the time, Beatrice is unavailable, she's married, she's not terribly impressed by him. He makes a big effort to sweep her off her feet, with invitations to travel and sweet, thoughtful letters, visiting, and eventually a friendship forms. An intensifying power struggle ensues, and readers will question who is in control. The Pole is described as exacting and unpredictable. This made me think of The Wife from Meg Wolancer. This is a short little read, but I really enjoyed it. We see behind the veil of happiness when a husband and wife travel to Helsinki for him to win a big writing award. And then J.M. Coetzee has a trilogy. It's an allegory around the life stories of Jesus. The first one in that trilogy is the childhood of Jesus. It's going to follow main character David as he struggles through life with his father in a new country and finding a mother figure. These works are described as profound, beautiful, and continually surprising. Evil Eye is my next one. Etaf Rum won praise for her debut, which is A Woman Is No Man. This was a bestseller and a book club pick when it came out a couple of years ago, 2019. Let's see. This one was about 3 generations of Palestinian American women struggling with individual desires amid their Arab culture and confront some surprising violence in their community. In this new one, Evil Eye, main character Yara is on probation at work for fighting with a racist coworker. Yara's mom says their troubles are to blame on a bit of evil eye, a bit of a family curse. Yara doesn't believe in old superstitions, but she does look to her past to unpack her troubled childhood in Brooklyn. A complicated mother-daughter drama that looks at intergenerational trauma and how we hand it down, as well as how to break that cycle of abuse. I also appreciate it being a peek inside modern expectations of Palestinian American women. It made me think of Daughters of the New Year. This takes place in New Orleans. 3 daughters of a Vietnamese refugee navigate their modern lives. They're kind of obsessed with the zodiac signs in their family. A little bit of that's handed down, and they encounter some long buried secrets. I think last but not least of the fiction is Northwoods. think it was Miranda and I looked at this cover and we're just like, oh God, what is that animal? It looks so, was it you? We're just like, ugh, this cover's terrible. And then I learned more about it. No.
I thought it looked like a cat.
Yeah, it looks like a cat bear. I guess it's supposed to be a panther or something. Yeah, I hate it as a cover. Like all the art you have available to you, and that's what came. Okay, whatever. But I think I'll get on hold for this one myself. It sounds really good. It's reviewed really well. It's the story of a single house in the woods of New England, told through the lives of those who lived there across a whole century. It starts with a pair of young lovers in Puritan colony. Later, there's a soldier who becomes a farmer, an apple farmer, I believe. A pair of spinster twins who are surviving a famine. A crime reporter who finds an unmarked grave. A love-lorn painter, and finally a con man. Each family or individual confronts the mysteries of living in the Northwoods. This story is for fans of history, nature, and literature. The Winter Soldier is his previous published fiction book. I believe this is his fourth published. The Winter Soldier was described by Anthony Dower. I always second guess myself on that one. It was described as part mystery, part war story, part romance, a dream of a novel. I think that's a pretty good endorsement. It's going to follow a 22-year-old medical student around Europe as he's helping on the battlefield with surgery during World War I. It also made me think of Thomas Canales, why do I keep doing this? The Book of Science and Antiquities, another well-reviewed, award-nominated author. This book will follow documentarian Shelby Apple, who is investigating linking the past of the Learned Man, a prehistoric man whose remains are believed to be the link between Africa and Australia, and this chases his and the documentarian's story across land and time.
So this is Starter Villain by John Scalzi. This is his newest book. So when you inherit your secret evil supervillain uncle's supervillain company, you expect things like secret volcanic layers, minions, plots to take over the world. What you don't expect are the millions of computer-savvy cats in middle management. So this is described as a hilarious, witty, just goofy as all giddy up story about the new boss. The first read-alike I have is actually his previous book called the Kaiju Preservation Society. This one, so a kaiju is, think of like Godzilla, the original one, so just a giant monster. And this society looks to preserve them in their natural habitat. The other book that this made me think of was Invisible Things by Matt Johnson, where you have a community of people who are disappearing and reappearing somewhere else, and it is an allegorical story about humans and things that we see and don't want to talk about. But it's also, both of these are described as very funny and very thought-provoking, just hilarious in general.
Okay, Recovery, The Lost Art of Convalescence by Gavin Francis. This is a succinct and informative guide to the secrets of recovery. Francis rejects the idea of recovery being something passive, instead teaching that patients have to actively devote time and energy to their healing process. Each chapter covers a different aspect of convalescence, and the book considers the healing process from multiple perspectives, including those of the patient, the doctor, and caretakers. Contains fascinating and useful tips to supplement standard medical resources available to patients. The author is a physician with 30 years of experience, and it's a short, hopeful, and perceptive book. You might also like The End of Illness by David Agus. This is another one written by a physician, and it redefines concepts of health and illness to offer new methods for living a long, healthy life. Or you could look at Elegant Defense by Matt Richdol. This one is a groundbreaking narrative exploration of the human immune system, written by a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. So, The Mysterious Case of Rudolf Diesel by Douglas Brunt addresses the 100-year mystery of what happened to French-German Rudolf Diesel. one of the world's greatest inventors. Diesel invented the internal combustion engine. In September of 1913, on the eve of World War I, he vanished during his steamship voyage from Belgium to France when he was planning on helping Britain improve its failing submarine program. Brunt explores theories like Diesel's being assassinated by Germany's Kaiser Wilhelm II, who wanted only Germany to benefit from Diesel's invention, or John D. Rockefeller, who saw the invention as a threat to his Standard Oil, before he offers evidence for his own theory of what happened. So this is engaging, well-researched history. Going Deep by Lawrence Goldstone, if you like kind of history of inventions, implications for warfare. This is the story behind the invention of the submarine by the self-taught and brilliant John Philip Holland. Savage Harvest by Carl Hoffman. This is similar in the sense of looking to solve an historical mystery. This is written by a journalist who retraces the steps of Michael Rockefeller to the jungles of New Guinea to solve the decades-old mystery surrounding his death.
So Blood in the Machine is a new book about Luddites. It's about people who were, raging against the machine before it was cool. It is described as a lucid examination of the Luddites, which was a working class insurgency in England that took up arms against the industrialists and automation. They were concerned about the loss of their jobs and how this would impact society moving forward. This is described as a well-researched narrative nonfiction that reaches through time and space to tell a story about how technology changed our world and continues to change our future. I'm going to say I have Rebels Against the Future by Sal Kirkpatrick, not Kirkpatrick this time, that also explores the Luddites and their legacy in general, what their philosophy was, and actually kind of mirrors it against the computer age, although it's the computer age circa 1995. It's a little bit of an older title, but it's interesting to think about what we were all very concerned computers were going to do to us in 1995. The other thing it made me think of is kind of the flip side, the cutting edge of technology where we are right now, which is quantum supremacy. This explores new computer technologies that are coming out, specifically quantum computers, which I have tried so many times to understand what's going on with them and how they work, and yeah, I got nothing. But this book has received a lot of praise because it explores these very complex machines in terms that are easier for all of us who are not astrophysicists and whatnot to understand. It's described as being written in a compelling and accessible style that makes you hopeful for the possibilities of the future. So, The Burning of the World, The Great Chicago Fire, and the War for the City's Soul is a new book. It is described as a riveting account of the 1871 Great Chicago Fire and its devastating path, and what happened after the fact specifically. It separates out the facts from the many myths and fictions about the fire. It's described as well-researched, and it pulls you into a lot of the different stories of different citizens throughout the city as the fire broke out and started raging across Chicago. And how this calamity shaped not only the city, but also the world in general, because Chicago at this point was becoming a major center of commerce. The first read-alike I have is The Great Chicago Fire, 1871. It is also a meticulously researched book that follows the path of the fire and how it reshaped the Chicago city skyline. I love this title because it not only talks about the history of the fire, but it also includes a lot of photos of the before and after the fire. So it's a really, really good look at that disaster. And then the other book that I grabbed was The Culture of Calamity, Disaster, and the Making of Modern America. It explores the variety of different disasters in U.S. history, and not only how the United States has responded to it, but also how these events have shaped the United States in a variety of ways, not only physically, like redoing a skyline or something like that, but also looking at policy decisions that were made as a result of those disasters. It's described as excessively written, thought-provoking, and bringing all new meaning to it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. The Hungry Season, a journey of war, love, and survival by Lisa M. Hamilton. It's a biography. It's meticulously reported over 7 years and written in the style of a novel. We follow La Moa, who was born in the highlands of Laos, and she is on the lowest possible rung of the societal ladder. She decides that she is not going to stay with what she has been given and decides to chart her own path as communist rule upends her life, and she discovers new ways to adapt to those changes. It's described as a compelling biography that follows one woman's quest to overcome wounds inflicted by war, society, and family alike. The first thing that I actually thought of was The Pursuit of Happiness by Chris P. Gardner. It is also a biography, and it goes through his story of arriving in San Francisco to pursue a career in medicine. However, through a series of events, he decides to go for a position in the competitive world of high finance and finds himself caught into a web of challenges. It's described as a deeply personal narrative about what it takes to pursue happiness in the United States. The other read-alike I have is We Are Displaced by Mala Yousafzai. Yeah, thank you. It describes not only her experience living in Pakistan under Taliban rule, but becoming a refugee along with 9 other girls from countries like Cambodia, Syria, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It's described as a powerful and emotional book that highlights the struggles and hopes and dreams of young girls who are often noted only as statistics of forced displacement.
All right, this one's for all you baseball fans. Why We Love Baseball by Joe Kosmansky. This is historical baseball.
Okay, then I'm done. Modern baseball now.
This is a love letter to baseball by a witty and knowledgeable author that features a winning collection of baseball moments. So in this book, he is highlighting 50 of the most memorable moments in baseball history. So he includes the major legend-creating moments like Babe Ruth's signaling of his home run, as well as some hidden gems that are less well-known. And the stories are told from a variety of perspectives, fans, players, coaches, officials, that should result in fresh takes even for fans who are familiar with these stories. If that sounds like something you would enjoy, you should also, of course, check out his earlier published Baseball 100, which is still on the new shelf. And in this one, he portrays 100 heroes and pioneers of baseball. And then a book whose title speaks for itself, Baseball 100 Classic Moments in the History of the Game by Joseph E. Wallace. Very much in the same vein. This one is nice. It's got lots of, colored photos and stuff to accompany the text.
Roger Maris on the cover.
Roger Maris on the cover. So that wraps it up for our Books in Focus. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Patrick.
We'll see you next month. Before that, and if you haven't heard, Jeanette Walls is visiting us August 31st. So we hope to see you all there.
Thank you.
If you want any of these books, please let us know.